but they couldn't calculate the sines of every angle. The Indians were to go much further, setting themselves a mammoth task. The search was on to find a way to calculate the sine function of any angle you might be given. The breakthrough in the search for the sine function of every angle will be made here in Kerala in South India. In the 15th century, this part of the country became home to one of the most brilliant schools of mathematicians to have ever worked. Their leader was called Madhava, and he was to make some extraordinary mathematical discoveries.
The key to Madhava's success was the concept of the infinite. Madhava discovered that you could add up infinitely many things with dramatic effects. Previous cultures have been nervous of these infinite sums, but Madhava was happy to play with them. For example, here's how 1 can be made up by adding infinitely many fractions.
I'm heading from 0 to 1 on my boat, but I can split my journey up into infinitely many fractions. So I can get to a half. Then I can sail on a quarter, then an eighth, then a 16th, and so on. The smaller the fractions I move, the nearer to 1 I get. But I'll only get there once I've added up infinitely many fractions.
Now, physically and philosophically, it seems rather a challenge to add up infinitely many things. But that's the power of mathematics, to make sense of the impossible. By producing a language to articulate and manipulate the infinite, you can prove that after infinitely many steps, you'll reach your destination.
Such infinite sums are called infinite series, and Madhava was doing a lot of research into the connections between these series and trigonometry. First, he realized that he could use the same principle of adding up infinitely many fractions to capture one of the most important numbers in mathematics, pi. Pi is the ratio of the circle's circumference to its diameter. It's a number that appears in all sorts of mathematics, but is especially useful for engineers because any measurements involving curves soon require pi. So for centuries, mathematicians searched for a precise value for pi.
It was in 6th century India that the mathematician Aryabhata gave a very accurate approximation for pi, namely 3.1416. He went on to use this to make a measurement of the circumference of the Earth, and he got it as 24,835 miles, which amazingly is only 70 miles away from its true value. But it was in Kerala in the 15th century that Madhava realised he could use infinity to get an exact formula for pi.
By successively adding and subtracting different fractions, Madhava could hone in on an exact formula for pi. First, he moved 4 steps up the number line. That took him way past pi. So next, he took 4/3 of a step, or 1 1/3 steps, back. Now he'd come too far the other way. So he headed forward 4/5 of a step. Each time he alternated between 4 divided by the next odd number. 4/7, 4/9, 4/11, and so on. He zigzagged up and down the number line, getting closer and closer to pi. He discovered that if you went through all the odd numbers, infinitely many of them, you would hit pi exactly.
I was taught at university that this formula for pi was discovered by the 17th century German mathematician Leibniz. But amazingly, it was actually discovered here in Kerala 2 centuries earlier by Madhava. He went on to use the same sort of mathematics to get infinite series expressions for the sine formula in trigonometry. And the wonderful thing is that you can use these formulas now to calculate the sine of any angle to any degree of accuracy.
It seems incredible that the Indians made these discoveries centuries before Western mathematicians. And it says a lot about our attitude in the West to non-Western cultures that we nearly always claim their discoveries as our own.
What is clear is the West has been very slow to give due credit to the major breakthroughs made in non-Western mathematics. Madhava wasn't the only mathematician to suffer this way. As the West came into contact more and more with the East during the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a widespread dismissal and denigration of the cultures they were colonising. The natives, it was assumed, couldn't have anything of intellectual worth to offer the West. It's only now, at the beginning of the 21st century, that history is being rewritten.
That Eastern mathematics was to have a major impact in Europe, thanks to the development of one of the major powers of the medieval world.